Welcome back to another episode. So this week I want to get onto some more work on the rudder. We've got a bit of work to do. I need to get that up into position, make sure everything's all lined up nicely. So we're going to move the rudder post up, and then as you can see, this is going to be in the way. So I'm going to have to unstitch these welds, make sure it's supported by the Atco props properly, and then roll this back a little bit so that the rudder will fit in there. So there's a little bit of work to do, so let's get started. So I've managed to get the rudder on, sitting nicely there. Got to close that gap up a bit, so we've got about 5mm gap sort of in here. I'm going to mark this at the height of this little foot here, and then we're going to cut that off, and that'll swing it nice and parallel. So we can still move that up a little bit, and that'll get us our rudder in position, and I can start making the pintle bearing mount to fit on there. And then we'll just have to adjust that slightly, the height, either by closing this gap up or moving this up a little bit to accommodate for the bottom of the pintle bearing. Probably doesn't make a lot of sense at the moment, but it'll all come together and you'll see it at the end. Pretty happy with this. Sits on there nicely. That's how long it was. Still a bit hot from cutting it. So now we're going to make a little shoe to house the bearing that's going to be on that. So that's the finished product there. It's that's going to sit on that little foot that comes out, and then we've got a little bit of a lean there so that the rudder comes out on an angle, so we have to have that relief to match the same angle that rudder post is coming out. Now we're going to make a foot for that to bolt down onto, and we've got to put a cover on that so that the pintle bearing doesn't come out. There's also a seam weld in here. We've got to take that out because the bearing is made to the size of this diameter of the pipe, this tube, and that's gonna foul the bearing. Alright, next step for making this shoe is we've got to make the foot. So basically I'm going to sit that on there like that. I'm going to cut this and square it up, and then we're basically going to make it in two pieces. One, cut that round out there, and that one, because we want it countersunk. So we don't want it sitting on top, we want it countersunk underneath. So I found this piece of scrap. This was originally used for the hard dodger up there. The original owner made it out of this 10 and 15mm plate, made it super heavy. Up there now we've got 1.6mm wall thickness tubing instead of solid 15 and 10mm bar. So 75mm thick. We're going to measure the overall length, cut it in two pieces, and then we're going to cut that round out and weld it on. Next step after that will be to put the a topper on there to retain the actual pintle bearing so it doesn't slip out. So let's get the foot done. Got the bearing housing parts all done. So we're just going to weld this foot onto the main body. The last part to make after this would be just a little retaining ring that will be tack welded on top, and we're going to drill some holes. So the bracket's all done. I don't have any garnet to give it a bit of a blast, but it's not bad. So that's basically what I was thinking. So there'll be a shoe, like a bearing sit inside this shoe, and that's going to help this from moving anywhere. So that long end's going to sit there, and that's going to keep that whole rudder post in line. Once it's all bolted up properly, that should basically stay where it is anyway. However, if we get a knock, this little pintle bearing is going to stop this from really moving anywhere. So just going to finish making the bearing for inside the shoe. But this job's basically done. Oh no, I've still got to drill 4 holes. I'm going to make these through holes all the way through that plate and that plate, just because I don't want to drill and tap, because if the corrosion happens in there, then you've got to helicoil them. If the helicoils fail, then you've got to drill them out and keep going bigger and bigger. So the through bolts would be a lot easier and maintenance free. And then if you can't get the bolts out, you can just cut the end of the nut off and then get a punch and punch that bolt out. But you see, I just welded in these little tabs that retain the pintle bearing from coming out, and yeah, not a bad little job. So I need to make up a plate to bolt the anchor winch onto. I've got some leftover 10mm plate here from when I did the hot water system. Downloaded this template online from the company that makes the anchor winches. However, it's not quite right. I've measured these out, and all these dimensions aren't quite right, even though it said that it was going to print it in its actual size. So if I use these bolt holes and all these offsets, it'll be slightly wrong. Luckily my plate's a little bit bigger than I need, and what I did is I basically put it on to the anchor winch and I marked out where the actual holes are. So I know I'll get them right, and that's the most important bit. This is just for wiring, not so important. But this 44 measures up to about 42.5. So none of it's all that bad. I'm just going to make these holes slightly bigger, and then yeah, just make my own plate up and just use this as a guide. So I'm going to trace around that, give it a rough cut, and then yeah, start fitting it on. Now that should be my plate all marked out nicely. Center pop the holes, electrical cables, chain. So we're going to cut that out. Alright, so up the top here, and we've got the anchor winch up. That's just sitting on the plate. I've only rough ground it nicely because we're going to be welding this whole thing, so there's no point making this all pretty. I've left this all bare metal in here from the plasma cut because I'm going to need a re-plasma cut through that to take this hole out, and then we'll die grind it up nice and then weld those two plates together all the way around so there's no gap for the water to get in, and then we can get crevice corrosion. So this is up here now. We've got the hole on that side too. This rope drum will actually come on this side. This is just set up how I bought it, and that I don't like that being on that side. I want to swap it back, so we're going to have a rope going one side and a chain going the other side if we need. Now ideally underneath in the sail locker it'd be nice to have this up here, but then I was thinking where this snubber would bolt onto, it'll be too close to this stanchion post here, so I've moved it back a little bit. So I'm happy that it's in that location. I'm just going to take it off, get a tape measure, make sure it's definitely in the center. It looks pretty good where it is, but we'll double check. Then we'll weld it all the way around, and then that will be done. Alright, so we got that all welded in. Got some really big welds on here, so I put like 2 or 3 weld passes on all of them. Very big welds. I just want this thing to be nice and sturdy. So I've got to plasma cut these holes out. That's going to be next fortnight, and then once they're plasma cut out I can get the die grinder in and clean all them up, and then weld those two bits together in here as well, because we don't want water ingressing into the sides and then you get that corrosion happening. That's for the electrical wiring, that's for the rope drum. So still a little bit more work to do, and I've got to do the same with the bolt holes. I'll drill them out, so I'll go through both plates, and then I will put a bead of weld on the inside of them, so yeah, no water ingresses in there. So yeah, it's another bit done. So that's all we got time for this fortnight. It's nice to see the keel go on. It's showing a little bit more progress, and that plate for the anchor winch. We've actually had a good weekend. It's just starting to go bad now. The clouds are coming over. That's why I've had to end the video here. It looks like we're about to get some rain for a little bit, but we had a fantastic weekend in weather, so I managed to come outside and do a few more bits outside the boat instead of hiding away inside. So yeah, there's not a lot to do on the outside, but we'll try and continue on and finish off those last couple of jobs that we were doing this fortnight in next fortnight's video. So that's all we got time for, unfortunately, this week. Yeah, let us know how we're going, and leave a comment, and hopefully everyone's back again next fortnight, and we'll see you all then. Thanks guys.